Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a topic that is often misunderstood and even feared by many: the art and dark psychology of ignoring a woman. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let me clarify something very important. We are not talking about being cruel, manipulative, emotionally abusive, or playing childish games. What we are exploring is a very real psychological dynamic that happens in relationships, and it can reveal deep truths about attraction, boundaries, emotional regulation, and personal power that most people never talk about openly. This subject tends to make people uncomfortable because it challenges socially accepted narratives about how men are supposed to behave in relationships. I have spent years as a therapist sitting across from men who feel confused, frustrated, and sometimes emotionally powerless when a woman pulls away or becomes distant. Many of these men are genuinely good people who are trying to do the right thing, yet they find themselves stuck in cycles of overgiving, over-explaining, and emotional exhaustion. Over time, I began noticing a clear and consistent pattern. A. Behavior that, when done consciously, respectfully, and with emotional intelligence, can completely change the way a woman perceives a man. Ignoring in this context is not about punishment, revenge, or emotional withdrawal. It is about strategy, clarity, and self-respect. It is about creating space that allows both people to see each other more clearly. Without pressure, desperation, or emotional, many people will call this manipulative. I will tell you directly that it feels uncomfortable because it challenges the script society gives men, which says that you must always chase, always respond immediately, always fix emotions, and always bend to her moods. But in my professional experience, when men understand the psychology behind selective attention and controlled emotional distance, relationships often gain clarity, respect, and even renewed attraction. I have seen it transform situations where communication had broken down completely, where a man felt invisible, undervalued, or emotionally dismissed, or where a woman had grown distant and disengaged. In this video, I am going to break down exactly why ignoring can have a psychological impact, how it influences attraction, and the subtle power it carries when done the right way. I will also share stories from my clinical practice, moments that were eye-opening, controversial, and sometimes uncomfortable to witness. By the end of this discussion, you will understand not just how to do it, but why it works, what it reveals about human behavior, and why it can shift the balance of respect and attention in your relationships in a healthy and grounded way. Why ignoring works and the hidden psychology behind it is something most men never learn. When we talk about ignoring a woman, most people immediately assume it means being cold, harsh, dismissive, or emotionally detached. But in my years as a therapist, I have learned that ignoring is not about cruelty at all. It is about understanding human behavior at a deeper psychological level. It is about recognizing that attention is one of the most powerful emotional currencies in any relationship. How you give attention, when you give it, and when you withhold it shapes perception more strongly than words ever can. I remember sitting with a man who was deeply frustrated because he felt invisible in his relationship. He was constantly trying to please, constantly responding, constantly chasing after his partner, only to feel her grow more distant with every effort. When I asked him to consider what would happen if he stopped reacting to every mood swing and stopped filling every silence, if he simply created space and focused on his own life, he was skeptical and afraid. He believed ignoring would push her away permanently. But what often happens is the opposite. By not overinvesting attention and not providing endless validation, you give her mind space to notice, reflect, and question her own feelings and behavior. Psychologists refer to this as emotional contrast. When someone becomes accustomed to constant attention and that attention is suddenly reduced, the brain experiences a subtle psychological shift. Curiosity increases. Desire can be triggered, and people begin evaluating what they may have been taking for granted. This is not magic or manipulation. It is biology and behavioral psychology. I have observed it repeatedly in therapeutic settings, where men felt powerless when they learned to create respectful distance while remaining emotionally stable. The women they cared about often approached with genuine interest, clarity, and sometimes vulnerability. This is not about manipulation. It is about self-respect and balance. Many men confuse attention with love and validation with value. Ignoring, when done intentionally, allows a man to reclaim his emotional center instead of reacting to someone else's fluctuating feelings. It teaches a subtle but powerful truth that your presence is valuable and should not be given indiscriminately. Society teaches men to always chase and always respond, but stepping back challenges those expectations, and that challenge creates intrigue. It forces honesty on both sides and reveals whether a relationship is built on genuine connection or habit and convenience. The fine line between silence and neglect is where many men fail. Silence can be powerful, but it becomes dangerous when misunderstood. One of the most common mistakes I see is men crossing into neglect. Neglect is absence without intention. The emotional impact is completely different from controlled distance. I have seen men withdraw in ways that confuse or hurt the woman they care about, leading to frustration, resentment, and emotional disconnection. Ignoring with purpose is selective and conscious. It is not disappearing out of anger or fear. It is stepping back to reset the dynamic and allow reflection. I often ask men, are you creating space or are you running away from discomfort? That question determines whether attraction grows or dies. I worked with a man who was over-texting, over-checking, and over-explaining. When he intentionally slowed his responses and focused on his own life, something shifted. She noticed his self-possession and calm. That is, presence through absence. Distance becomes attractive when intentional. Neglect becomes destructive when careless. Understanding this is emotional intelligence. Relationships are not one-way streets. Emotional energy is finite. When you give it selectively, it signals self-respect. When silence is controlled and thoughtful, it creates curiosity and respect. When it becomes reactive, it damages trust. Learning the difference changes everything. Emotional reactions and what her behavior really means is another misunderstood area. When a man steps back, her reactions are rarely random. They are rooted in attachment patterns and perception of value. I worked with a man who stopped responding instantly. She became irritable and distant at first. He panicked. I explained that this was emotional calibration, not rejection. Her brain was processing the shift. Initial reactions are not final outcomes. They are signals. Men who panic and chase reinforce unhealthy patterns. Her reactions reflect her internal needs and insecurities. When a man remains calm and grounded, curiosity and respect often emerge. When he becomes reactive, tension grows. Her behavior mirrors how she perceives your stability. Emotional responses are information, not judgment. Learn to observe without overreacting. When you maintain your emotional authority, ignoring becomes clarity, not a trick. The power of self-value and attraction cannot be overstated. I worked with a man we will call David. He gave constant attention and lost himself. He equated attention with worth. Women are drawn to men who know their value and do not overextend for validation. Attraction is grounded confidence. When David prioritized his life, she noticed and re-engaged. Self-value shifts dynamics naturally. It is not arrogance. It is clarity. A man who is whole inspires respect and desire without forcing it. Common mistakes men make include emotional reactivity, ignoring too abruptly, expecting immediate results, and confusing distance with manipulation. I worked with a man named Eric who panicked and overdid it. He disappeared for days, creating confusion. Ignoring must be measured and patient. Emotional reactions take time. When Eric learned restraint and clarity, his relationship improved naturally. Finally, distance can spark reflection and desire. I worked with Michael, who was always available and emotionally drained. When he stepped back with intention, she reflected and re-engaged. Distance interrupts emotional baselines and restores mystery. It allows both people to evaluate the relationship. Honestly, it is not punishment. It is clarity. When done correctly, it renews attraction, respect, and emotional balance while protecting a man's sense of self and dignity.